The desert doesn't hide its secrets, it just waits for the wind to forget them. I learned that one afternoon when I stumbled upon a tent pitched in the shade of a dry wash, the canvas bleached pale as bone, its guy lines still taut, its zipper drawn closed as though its owner had only stepped away for a moment. I'd been hiking alone for 3 days through the Canyonlands, following no marked trail, just the course of an old cattle route that wound through sage and slickrock. The air shimmered with heat, and even the ravens were quiet. From the ridge above, the tent had looked like a pale rock outcropping, but as I descended, the shape took on edges too neat to be natural. I approached cautiously, my boots crunching on the brittle salt crust. The camp was ghostly still. No footprints, but my own disturbed the dust. There was a fire ring of small stones, blackened long ago and untouched since. A tin cup sat beside it, half buried in sand. The zipper of the tent resisted my first pull, its teeth clinging with corrosion. When it finally gave, a whiff of dry air and aged canvas drifted out. No rot, no decay, just the preserved scent of sun and solitude. Inside, everything was perfect. A sleeping bag, neatly rolled, a small enamel pot resting beside a folded wool shirt. A compass, a book of matches in a tin, and a leather-bound journal placed squarely in the centre, like an offering. There were rations too, dried beans, hardtack, jerky, all sealed in wax paper. Whoever this was, they'd been methodical. Nothing was disturbed by rodents or time. It was as if the desert itself had chosen to keep this place untouched. I sat cross-legged on the sand just outside the tent and opened the journal. The handwriting was careful at first, neat, almost military. Entries spoke of weather, terrain, and water caches. Then, about halfway through, the tone began to shift. The writer mentioned the whisper at night, something carried on the wind. "It says my name," one entry read. "It's not wind, I've heard it closer." Days later. "It calls from the canyon mouth now. I can't see anyone, but the echo waits for my answer." The final entry stopped me cold. "The voice knows the way out. Tomorrow I'll follow it. If anyone finds this, you'll understand why I had to go." That was it. No signature, no dates after that. I sat for a long while, the sun sliding toward the horizon, wondering what to do. I could close the tent again, leave it sealed, let the desert keep its secret, or I could follow, see where that unseen path led, where that voice had drawn its listener. Alone out there, the air dry as parchment, I couldn't tell if the faint sound in my ears was wind or something else calling me to listen closer. I spent the night near the old tent, though I hardly slept. The stars were so sharp they seemed to hum, and every rustle of dry grass set my nerves on edge. The desert at night has a way of shrinking the world until it feels like you're inside a breath held by the earth itself. I built no fire, didn't seem right to disturb the stillness of that place. Instead, I sat with my back against a sandstone boulder, the journal open beside me, reading by the dim light of my headlamp. The ink had faded to a rust colour, but I could still make out the last few pages where the handwriting grew frantic. The writer had begun to lose the shape of his letters, as though the act of writing was a race against something unseen. He wrote about hearing footsteps outside his camp when there were no tracks, about waking to find stones arranged in a circle around the tent that hadn't been there the night before, about how, when he shouted into the canyon, the echo came back a heartbeat too late, as though it had waited to listen first. I remember feeling a chill then, even in the warmth of the night air. The moon rose and silvered the land in that strange half-light, where everything looks half alive. I thought I heard it too, something faint and melodic in the distance, a low hum that rose and fell like someone speaking just beyond comprehension. Maybe it was wind slipping through the rock hollows, but it carried the rhythm of words, or seemed to. I caught myself whispering back before realising what I was doing. Come morning, I tried to shake it off. Packed my own small camp and decided I'd mark the coordinates and report the site when I got back to civilization. But as I stood there, looking at that pristine tent, the zipper drawn again, I couldn't shake the feeling that the person who'd written that journal had been as sane as I was until they weren't. The canyon stretched west, a narrow fissure leading into the Badlands where the sandstone turned red and shadowed. That's where the writer said the voice came from, the place where light can't linger. I told myself I'd just take a look, just far enough to understand what he might have meant. I left the tent sealed, made a small cairn to mark it, and stepped into the wash that wound toward the darker stone. The sound came faintly again around midday when the sun burned white overhead. I stopped, turned my head, and the air itself seemed to vibrate. It wasn't music, not exactly. It was something like breathing through the rock. The wind carried dust that shimmered like fine ash. And I found footprints then, faint but real, leading deeper into the ravine. They weren't mine. That's when I realised I wasn't deciding whether to follow. I already had. By afternoon, the canyon had swallowed me whole. The walls pressed closer as I moved, rising sheer on either side until the sky was only a thin blue ribbon far above. My footsteps echoed strangely, not in the usual short bursts, but in drawn-out tones that seemed to linger after each step. I followed the faint prints I'd seen, half eroded but still visible where sand had gathered in cracks of stone. The more I looked, the more they seemed to shift, as if the desert were uncertain whether to keep them or erase them. Every so often I'd stop to listen. The wind moved through the slot like breath through a flute, low, hollow and alive. Once, when I whispered a word just to break the silence, I heard something answer. It wasn't an echo. The sound came back twisted, slower, like someone repeating me with a mouthful of dust. I tried to tell myself it was the shape of the canyon playing tricks, but the hair on my arm said otherwise. I came upon an overhang where the air smelled faintly of rusted metal. Beneath it lay a small pile of stones, too deliberate to be natural. I brushed them aside and found what might once have been a campfire. Black dust, tiny shards of charcoal. Nearby, a tin cup half buried in silt, just like the one I'd seen by the tent. I ran my thumb along its rim and felt an odd warmth as though it had just been set down. The journal's words replayed in my head. The voice knows the way out. I hadn't realised until then that the canyon twisted north, away from the direction I'd come, away from any map I remembered. I could have turned back right there, I should have. But curiosity is its own kind of hunger. I wanted to understand what had happened to the man who'd left that perfect camp behind. Hours passed, the light thinned and the canyon turned copper, then bruised purple as the sun dipped low. Shadows filled the gullies and the hum returned stronger than before. It didn't seem to come from any one place now, but from everywhere at once. The ground beneath me, the walls around me, even the air in my lungs. I felt it in my bones like the vibration of a drum. I shouted just to hear my own voice, but the echo that came back wasn't mine. It said something, a whisper that could have been a name. I froze. Then, far ahead, I saw what looked like a narrow cleft glowing faintly with reflected light. The tracks led straight toward it. I told myself I'd go only as far as that glow, take a quick look and turn around. But by the time I reached it, dusk had fallen and the desert night was already folding itself over me like a dark tide. I was too deep in now to tell where the voice ended and where my own thoughts began. The cleft opened into a chamber of stone unlike anything I'd seen in the desert. It wasn't a cave so much as a cathedral carved by wind and time, the walls polished smooth and rippled like frozen waves. Light seeped in from somewhere above, pale and blue, enough to see the floor strewn with sand and a scatter of small rounded pebbles that clinked softly beneath my boots. The air was cooler here, still carrying that low vibration, now more like a distant voice murmuring through water. I called out again, my voice hushed by the cavern's vastness. "Hello?" The word came back almost kindly, drawn out, reshaped, as though someone were considering it. My throat felt dry, my pulse heavy in my ears. I took another step, then another, until I saw it. A figure-shaped hollow pressed into the far wall. Not carved, not painted, but outlined in soot or mineral stain, like someone had stood there for a long time and then simply vanished, leaving their shadow behind. At the base of the shape lay a few objects half buried in dust, a tin whistle, a cracked compass, a strip of cloth that might have been part of a shirt cuff. I crouched and brushed the dust away, half expecting the things to crumble under my fingers, but they held fast, dry and intact, just like everything in that tent had been. My breath caught when I saw the initials scratched into the compass lid, same as those stamped on the journal's inside cover. That's when I felt it again, the presence. The hum deepened, not in sound, but in feeling, like something large had moved closer without disturbing the air. My light flickered. I turned, scanning the smooth walls, but there was nothing there, just a sense that I wasn't standing alone anymore. A whisper came, not from behind or ahead, but from every direction at once. "You found me!" I froze, unsure if I'd actually heard it, or if my own thoughts had formed the words. The sound wasn't loud, it was intimate, like breath against my ear. I wanted to speak, to ask who, to ask how, but my throat refused. Then the light dimmed further, and I noticed faint patterns on the walls, lines spiralling inward toward the hollow where the shadow stood. They weren't painted, they shimmered faintly, as though alive beneath the surface. And the voice came again. "Follow." I don't remember making the decision. My legs just carried me forward. The air grew colder with each step until I could see my breath. The humming became almost musical, rising and falling like a chant, too ancient to name. When I reached the wall, my hand trembled as I lifted it toward that faint outline. The moment my fingertips brushed the cool stone, the sound ceased. Everything went perfectly, impossibly silent. Then, from deep within the rock, came a sigh, like someone exhaling after a very long wait. I don't remember blacking out, but when I opened my eyes, the light had changed. The blue glow was gone, replaced by a flat grey dawn filtering down through cracks high above. My hand still rested against the wall, cold and slick with dew. The hollow figure was gone. So were the markings. It was just bare sandstone now, pale and indifferent. For a long time, I sat there, trying to steady my breathing, unsure if I'd slept, dreamt, or crossed some invisible line between the two. When I finally stepped back into the canyon, the silence felt different, emptier, like something had moved on. The footprints I'd followed were gone, wiped clean by the night wind. My own tracks too had vanished. I tried to retrace my path, but the landscape had changed in subtle ways, as though the desert had drawn a new map while I slept. Still, instinct, or maybe memory, guided me. By midday, I caught sight of the ridge I'd first descended, and relief flooded through me so hard I nearly laughed. When I returned to the spot where the old tent had stood, I thought for a second I'd come to the wrong place. The wash was the same, the boulder, the fire ring, but the tent was gone. Not collapsed, not torn, not a trace of canvas or rope or tin cup. Only a shallow rectangle of undisturbed sand, smooth as if brushed clean by careful hands. Even the cairn I'd built was gone. For a while, I just stood there. The sun beat down. A dust devil danced lazily across the flats. I took off my pack and sat in the same spot where I'd first opened the journal. That, at least, was still in my pack. Its cover brittle, its pages fragile. I opened it again, searching for the final entry, but the handwriting had faded to near invisibility, the ink bleached by heat or time. Only one faint sentence remained at the bottom of the page, written in a trembling scrawl I hadn't noticed before. Now it calls another. I closed the book carefully and looked out toward the horizon. The air shimmered in the distance, and for a moment, just a breath, I thought I saw a pale shape moving along the wash, walking away from me toward the red rocks, too far to make out, yet unmistakably human. I called out, but no echo came this time. The desert simply listened. That night, back in my own tent miles away, I woke to the faintest sound, soft as wind brushing stone, a low hum rising and falling, somewhere beyond the fabric walls. I told myself it was just the air cooling, the earth settling. But even as I drifted towards sleep, I felt it again. That subtle vibration in the bones, that quiet invitation. Somewhere out there, the desert was still whispering, and I wasn't sure anymore whether I'd left that place behind or brought a part of it back with me.